United Cycle opened its doors in 1928 when Mr. Montague took over 3 small bike and hardware stores and put them together under the name United. In 1934, Raleigh Brooks bought the store, and it has been in the Brooks family for more than 70 years.
Uncle Raleigh lost 2 of his sons in the war, and his 3rd son in 1952 was drowned, or 51. And then Uncle Raleigh asked Dad to come into the store and help him out for a few months while he was getting over that shock of his 3rd son. And Dad was in construction at the time. He had just moved back into Edmonton. He was a farmer before that. And he got into United Cycle, and Uncle Raleigh eventually asked him if he'd like to buy it, and that's how we got into it. It wasn't anything planned in the Brooks family or in my dad's career path, I'm sure, to get into the retail business.
Reg Brooks may not have wanted a job in retail, but he certainly understood it, particularly in the early years when Edmonton was a small city.
Reg Brooks was the kind of a person that if you come into the store and needed something and you didn't have enough money to pay for it, he'd say, "You need it?" And they'd say, "Yes, well, here it is, you take it and go home with it." And come back sometime later when you have money to buy stuff from United Cycle.
I remember people coming in and buying bicycles for their children and wanting the children to learn how to do their finance. So they'd buy a $40 bike and put $1 down, and it would be $1 a week to be paid off from their grocery route. This stuff, for some reason, sticks with me so vividly.
I think the first one that we heard from my father, Reg Brooks, was the one that great Uncle Raleigh gave to him, and that was to take care of your customers and they'll continue to take care of you. Be honest, take care of the people, and they'll always take care of you. And I think that from there we've just built out.
I remember farmers from South Edmonton coming in and buying bikes, or mainly they'd come in and buy guns and get my dad to make the bill out for way less than the gun was worth because they didn't want their wife to know how much they spent on it.
Over the years, United Cycle moved on and off White Avenue before settling on Gateway Boulevard.
My first recollection of United Cycle is going on the streetcar with my mom down White Avenue and having to get off. We had just moved into the city, had to get off in the middle of White Avenue and walk across, and it was on a Saturday, and White Avenue was unbelievably busy, and that would have been probably 1950. And then walking into this old little dark, in my opinion it was a dark little old store and had wood floor on it and stuff. But I remember going over probably grades 6 or 7 one Saturday with Dad, and he let me stand behind the counter and serve customers. And in those days we had fishing equipment and guns and stuff like that. But so I was standing there, and this young man came up, and he was kind of young, and he asked me for a jock strap. And I didn't have a clue what a jock strap was, and it was one of my more embarrassing things. But that's my first customer. Dad had to come to my rescue.
I remember White Avenue for some reason very vividly, and because it was a playground for me. And I played with everything in there. I played with the guns, I played with the fishing tackle. I know that I think Dad would do this just to get rid of me. He'd always throw a broom at me and tell me to go out and sweep the sidewalk. I'm sure I did it 4 or 5 times a day. Every time I see the mural out front with him with a broom, that's what the merchant did. And I just enjoyed the avenue.
Reg Brooks was the most common figure in the store from the 1950s through the 70s, but his wife Lois was also known to stop by.
I remember Grandma in the store. Grandma was always hardworking, and she was I remember her always cleaning the bathrooms, making me feel bad because we hadn't done it properly, and changing out the tea towels in the lunchrooms. And she was a very grounded person, so it was always fun. And Grandma had such great respect in the store. Everybody loved Grandma.
Dad and I were one time down at the bank, and the bank manager said, "You know, Reg, you've done really well with the business." And he said, "Yes, I have. I've had a good partner." And I was sitting there and thought my buttons were going to bust and how he was going to say how much Wilf had helped him. Not that he didn't say that, but he said, "You know, without my wife, I could have never got this done." And so it deflated me for a moment that day. But as I got older, I realized what partnership meant and, you know, what family business meant.
Wilf and Iola may not have chosen a life in retail either, but it chose them. And later, Brother Rod joined in.
I didn't really work in the store till about grade 10 after we moved off of White Avenue onto 104th Street. And then we worked Thursday nights and Saturdays. I mean, there was always, Wilf and I were there Thursday nights and Saturdays. So if we had anything else planned for Thursday night or Saturday, it was put aside because the store came first, because Dad needed us. He only had 2 other employees.
But it was just a toy shop to me, and I think to many of our staff, it's that way today. Like people have often said, you know, when you're going to quit working, and I often say I never worked a day in my life. So that's what I remember. You know, I was the only one around the school that would skip school and show up at their dad's place of work and give them some story about how we got out early. Be amazed how much we got out early.
Well, when I graduated in '62, there was Dad and 2 other employees, and I had worked all through high school part-time, and it just seemed that was the next step, was to get involved in the business. And I loved it, and I took over all the paperwork part of it, because that was on my dad's expertise.
Well, I remember laying on the kitchen floor sorting out all the old checks. So she'd bring the checks home, and I'd have to go and put them in order. It's probably how I learned to count, was putting the United Cycle checks in order from their numbers.
Jason is a 4th-generation Brooks family member working at United Cycle. On any given day, you might find a half a dozen family members working at the store.
The pluses is you get to be so close to your family all the time. You get to see them every day. A lot of people don't get to see their family that much, so it's nice to just be with them all the time. I get to be with my sisters all the time. I get to be with my cousins and my uncles and my aunts all the time. The minus is you get to be with them all the time. So no, it's fun. I really enjoy it.
It's not okay to not show up or to do less than you're capable of. This is somebody who's known you your whole life, and they know when you can do better, and so there's always that subtle, not pressure, but expectation, and I think that's a good thing.
It's good. None of us are threatened for our jobs. None of us are threatened for our positions. We can be very open with each other. With the people that I work with now, the family members that I work with now, it's very enjoyable. I think we have excellent communication.
In the 1970s, United Cycle added motorcycles to the mix. They also added a few more staff, albeit some more part-time than others, such as Reg Brooks's neighbor.
I was working at Coca-Cola at the time, and they were started to go into the motorcycle business. And he wanted to know what I come in and work for him part-time. So I used to come in Thursday nights and Saturdays and set up motorcycles, put the wheels, put them together and service them, and go from there. I never took any money from him.
I know we have one gentleman who was one of my mentors and heroes growing up. He came in to help us out, and my father gave him a paycheck, and he still got the paycheck because he told him it would never be cashed.
First check, I think, was about $125, and I don't know how many days that was for, but it's still at home, never cashed. And I told him at that time when he gave it to me, this check will never be cashed, but I took it as a keepsake.
I always think of my time at United Cycle as my university education. A lot of the things that I maybe didn't realize until later on where I'd pick them up. But I think that seeing how United Cycle lived out the business principles that they talked about, gave me a pattern or a base. The core values, the way you treat people in general. It's easy to say I saw how customers got treated, but I also know, having worked there for 8 years, I know how employees got treated. And when I went into my own business and have my own people that I'm responsible for, I picked up a lot of those attitudes.
I worked for United Cycle for almost 12 years, and it never felt one day like work. Working at United always felt like, I was working at a family's company. I was working with a bunch of friends. I don't think there was one day that I ever felt like I had a job. It felt like, this is what I was born to do, and I loved the sales part of sporting goods. I loved coming to work. I could hardly wait to get to the office. I could hardly wait to get downstairs and start selling.
I've always been proud to have United Cycle for an account, because they also taught me a lot. They always took the business very seriously, and you had to, honesty and upfront integrity with the firm, because that was what they were like. And I've often said, I don't think Wilf Brooks or any of the Brooks people have ever lied to me in their life. I don't think they've even come close to a fib. They've always been real straight shooters and, you know, a real pleasure to deal with.